I'm going to be talking about how to keep your brains healthy. I'm going to be talking about why you need to think about keeping your brain healthy, and a totally different approach to sort of looking at this. And we're going to do a bunch of did you knows, and I'm going to ask you guys some questions, and we're going to try to have fun with this. And then at the end, we do have some like really good gummies that are good for the brain. So I got interested in the brain a number of years ago because my practice used to be in the greater Seattle area, and I was seeing a lot of people with concussions. And my practice was in Bellevue, Washington, which is on the east side, which is the nicer part. And Overlake Hospital was referring every concussion patient to me. And then in 2016, I got asked to create a program to heal the brain after concussion, because this brain meeting asked a bunch of neurologists to present this, and the neurologists didn't have a method to heal the brain. And so this is one of the first points. Neurologists do not heal the brain. And if you go to a neurologist and you're having any memory things, or one of your family members, they don't have any method to deal with this at all. The drugs do not work, and I'll be explaining that a little bit more. But that also has to do with the whole concept of, if you just label something and say, what do I have to match with it, and it's a drug or something, that method doesn't work for so many things in the body, especially the brain. It doesn't work for the heart really either, but it works a little bit better for the heart. Okay, so I developed a whole program to heal the brain after concussion, but if this doesn't work, we're definitely gonna do a TED Talk. I guess we're gonna do a TED Talk here. Okay. So, actually, a TED Talk. So, how many of you have ever walked, how many have done this, and then we'll tell you, walk in a room, you're not sure, what did I go in here for? Okay? And if it happens more than once, then you gotta be a little bit concerned about it. Okay, how many of you ever had a problem finding a word? You wanted to find a word, you were gonna talk to someone, you had trouble finding a word. Okay, how many of you have ever felt brain fog? And what this is you feel foggy in your head. And I hear this a lot from patients. It's a very frequent complaint. I have brain fog. People describe this differently, but it just means and when you get to the root of it, it's more like they say, I feel I'm slow. I feel like I'm not processing normally. There's just a lot of things that aren't working as well as they should, okay? So I'm gonna go over all these different symptoms that people can have, but I'm gonna tell you this right now, no matter what your age is, you've got to be doing things to keep your brain healthy. One of the big fallacies in this society is, well, I don't have to do anything to keep my brain healthy, or anybody in the family's brain healthy, until we find out they have early dementia. And then we go to a doctor and find out there's nothing we can do, and then we sign up for a memory home or something. I mean, that's ridiculous, okay? It's just like you don't want to wait till you have a heart attack to start doing something about your arteries, okay? So believe it or not, a lot of stuff in the brain starts 20 years before we have symptoms, 20 years. So what I'm going to talk to you about what sort of goes on, but what are the raw ingredients in the brain? What do you have up here, okay? You have neurons, and neurons are the really active cells that are doing a lot of stuff. But then you have the synaptic connections between them. So what's actually interesting is that if you have a method of building synaptic connections, even though a person has less neurons, then they're going to do better than if their next door neighbor has the same number of neurons and is doing nothing to build connections. So it's not just the number of neurons we have, it's the synaptic connections. But then I'm going to tell you what else is going on. It's also the blood-brain barrier. And the blood-brain barrier is very important because it can become leaky and let stuff into the brain. And I'm going to be talking more about the blood-brain barrier, but the blood-brain barrier is extremely important, and there's all this new information that brain problems are starting in people much earlier because the blood-brain barrier is getting damaged and leaky and permeable, just like the gut can get damaged, leaky, and permeable. And what's actually interesting about this is we can measure antibodies to structural proteins in the gut lining, in the intestine, and the brain in the blood-brain barrier has the same structural proteins. And so that means when the immune system starts going after these structural proteins and these junctions open up in the small intestine, the same thing can happen in the blood-brain barrier in the brain. And the brain's supposed to be a protected area. Only oxygen and certain nutrients are supposed to get in there, and waste products are supposed to get out. But what's happening is all kinds of things are getting in there. Viruses, bacterial membranes called lipopolysaccharides, mold biotoxins, all kinds of things are getting in there causing inflammation. And so what's really interesting is that many people are walking around, and including a lot of you folks in this room, with brain inflammation. Now that doesn't mean you got encephalitis, because encephalitis is a virus that causes a viral, brain inflammation that's extremely severe. But what's actually interesting is a lot of the viruses that can cause encephalitis can sort of be poorly contained by the immune system and cause ongoing brain inflammation, including Epstein-Barr. And most people have gotten Epstein-Barr in their life, usually during high school, college, or something. But if your immune system becomes less competent, it can be reactivated. So I'll give you an example. I'm going to start giving you some examples of some of the people that I've seen. Guy comes in, he's a pretty high-level guy in a company, and he has like 40 people underneath him, and he's 54, and he says, my brain is not working. I don't know what's wrong with it. My brain is not working, and I can't sort of organize my staff, and I have brain fog. I'm forgetting key things. I'm having trouble finding words. And he goes, I'm only 54. This is really concerning. He goes, do I have dementia? I said, so I said, I got to do a full assessment. And, so this was a story of somebody that had reactivated Epstein-Barr. So one of the key concepts here is if someone's having brain issues, we have to look for causes, because there are things that are insulting the brain. And I'm going to tell you about a bunch of these causes, because some of these things you guys can do something about, because this also relates to prevention. But I ran Epstein-Barr tests along with Lyme tests and other things, and mold and other things, and it was mainly the Epstein-Barr was like very, very, very high. And it wasn't until we treated the Epstein-Barr, and then I used something called Frequency Specific Microcurrent to heal his brain, and I'll talk to you about that because it's an amazing modality to heal the brain and the rest of the body, that he not only fully recovered, but he goes, my brain's better than it used to be. When we finally finished, and I said, that's what I wanted, and that's what you should want. You know how to take care of your body and your brain, and you should want a better brain than you had before. So I'll give you some other examples of what this looks like. This was the most dramatic example. So previously, by practice in Bellevue, Washington, this gal makes an appointment, and I always do this when I walk in the room. What are you, want to know what your goals are, and what are you here for, and how can I help you today? And she said, I think I'm getting demented. I said, wait a second, your forms say you're 34 years old. She goes, I know, but I think I'm getting demented. And I heard you're a brain specialist, among other things that you do, and I need some help. And she'd been to 4 neurologists, 4 of them. Nobody did anything. So I said, when did this start? And she said, 2 years ago. So I said, well, what happened 2 years ago? She goes, I don't know. So I did a complete history on all the factors that can damage or injure the brain. And then I sent someone out to her house to measure electromagnetic fields, a technician. And we actually have someone like that here. Her name is Kathy Cook. But anyways, the person there went out, and then she interrupted me at work and said, you gotta hear what's going on with this gal. Do you know what happened 2 years ago? I said, no, she didn't tell me. She didn't remember. She got a sleep number bed that you plug in that does all these measurements on your body. And the technician said, I measured the fields around this bed. It's as if she's sleeping next to a power station or under a power line. She's literally frying her neurons for 8 hours every night. And so the way that situation healed is we did all these electromagnetic protection things. The bed became unplugged. She only plugged it in when she wanted to adjust the sleep number. And then the other thing that was really fascinating about this, because a lot of her problems were electromagnetic field exposure, was she had an Alexa in almost every room, except her 4-year-old daughter's room. And so she had like 7 Alexas in this house. I've never heard of so many Alexas in a house. This was like trying to be the smart home, but it became the dumb home. Because there is no such thing as a smart home in regard to what it's going to do to you. It's going to make you dumb. And I tell people this, like, I just moved into a home in Star on a lake, and it was like brand new, and you know, you can get amazing value here compared to Seattle. And it was advertised as a smart home. And I did all these measurements and had Captain Cook come in the house, and these brilliant panels that you're supposed to control everything were putting out massive fields. And so this home initially had all these high electromagnetic fields, and I had to like replace them just with switches. Just like turn the light on, turn it off, or a dimmer switch or something. So this is one key principle, that our brains and our blood-brain barrier are being damaged by electromagnetic fields. And they come in all types of things that people are being exposed to. But in terms of the story of that 34-year-old woman, the only person that wasn't having brain problems in her family was her 4-year-old daughter, who thought Alexa was a witch. And she said, "Mommy, I do not want Alexa the witch in my bedroom, I'm scared." So they didn't put an Alexa in her bedroom. All the other kids were having problems in school with attention deficit disorder and other problems. And then, you know, this gal and her husband were actually having what looked like early dementia, how bad it was. But she eventually healed because I put her on a program of supplements and a special dietary plan to heal her brain, and we treated her with the Frequency Specific Microcurrent. And just controlled all the electromagnetic fields in her home. And then everybody in the house got better. So, I mean, this comes in all varieties of, you know, the way people are starting to notice something. But I am noticing brain issues in people starting in their 30s, 40s. This is no longer just wait long enough and you'll have a problem. This is like wait long enough and you're gonna have a problem in your 40s, 50s, whatever, because people these days their brains are being insulted by so many things. By glyphosate, which is from Roundup, that is completely through the population right now. And it damages the brain and the blood-brain barrier, and it damages the gut. And actually anything that causes leaky gut can cause brain problems. Anything that causes body inflammation in the body, can cause brain inflammation, and that's been shown actually. Not getting enough sleep, like 6 or less hours, and the magic number is 7 or more, but 6 or less has been now proven that your body and brain will be inflamed for 4 full days. 4 days. So if you just have a night, 2 nights a week, so I've had some patients like 2 nights a week, they don't get enough sleep. And they're inflamed all the time. Their body and brain are inflamed all the time because of just this. And there's all this information that the blood-brain barrier becomes leaky because of this inflammation, not getting enough sleep. The blood-brain barrier is actually fascinating because it's not only blood vessels, it's all these support cells called the glia cells and the microglia cells. And I'll be talking about that a little bit more. So the other things that are insulting our brains are mold, mycotoxins. A lot of people have been exposed to that. All you need is a water leak. There's all kinds of ways. And one thing that I also realized was there's mold in vents in homes. And did you know that even if you move into a brand new home and you think you have good air quality and you don't mold the vents, you don't, because they don't hire a company to suck out the vents. So I think I told you recently I moved into a home in Star on a lake, and I called Boise HydroClean and said, you know, I know it's a new home, but I want you to come out and suck out these vents. He took pictures, and it was unbelievable what was in there. This was a new home. There was bits of mold, there was sawdust, there was plywood dust. Some of the workers had just thrown their cans from drinking pop in there, and he said, this is routine. This is what we find in almost every home. So like what I am amazed with is like almost nobody thinks about like hiring this type of company to clean their air. But what you breathe is damaging your brain. And it's also in the air pollution. The air pollution is actually damaging the brain. And there's a neurologist that wrote a book called The End of Alzheimer's, and he works in LA. And he's got all this information about air pollution and brain inflammation of the average person. And then kids' brains are being insulted as much or more than adult brains because their skulls allow electromagnetic field damage to get in easier. So, you know, the kids on the devices and the kids on the phone, all these things have to be limited in order to, you know, help our kids, because I'm seeing more and more kids with brain dysfunction. So this whole thing is a continuum. It's not just, do you have dementia now? It's like, do you have any type of brain dysfunction? You know, the brain fog, the memory problems, the organization problems, the planning problems. And there's something called brain energy. And brain energy is like, well, how much time can you really put into something and focus before you feel exhausted? That's brain energy. So it turns out that one of the things that's happening to us is our mitochondria in our cells, in our brain, are not functioning as well and not producing the kind of ATP that they need to produce, the amount. And then we feel exhausted with our brain, with mental efforts. Like, you know, and how many of you procrastinate, or how many of you say, I'm done? You know, it's like some of that may be because you're not producing enough ATP in your mitochondria. It might not just be because you're a procrastinator, or it might not be just because you got ADHD. Everybody thinks they got ADD these days. I hear it all the time. It's ridiculous. It's like, do something about it. It's not, you know, and the other thing that I hear, which is really interesting, is these people that come in for other problems. Like I see a lot of people with autoimmune disease, gut problems, all kinds of orthopedic problems, and they go, could you slow down? I didn't understand what you said. And then they go, oh, isn't that funny? I go, no, this is not funny. And then they say, my brain hasn't been working for a while. Isn't that funny? No, it's not funny. Because there's a lot of people that don't get any attention for this because they think it's funny. Because it's not funny when it gets worse. And they're gonna, like, when it gets worse and people have more memory problems and more problems finding words and whatever. So I've been very sort of aware of all of this, and I have a whole approach to treat this. And so this is actually an interesting term I want to bring to your attention. You all know about a colonoscopy, right? Where they put a tube up your rectum and look to see if you have polyps or cancer, okay? So everybody's supposed to get that after age 50, but I'm going to tell you the recommendations are horrible. Polyps grow into cancer within 2 to 3 years. So this thing, we'll see you back in 10 years, that's ridiculous. Everybody deserves, if they want one, a colonoscopy every 3 years, so it doesn't turn into cancer. That's one thing. So, but that is like, do you or don't you have a polyp? So there's something called, this neurologist actually that is a functional neurologist in LA who wrote the book The End of Alzheimer's, Dale Bredesen, he coined the term cognoscopy. And he said everybody should be having a cognoscopy every year, which is a visit with a doctor trained in all this stuff to screen what is going on with your brain. Do you have any symptoms? Taking some brain-based tests, and we included one of them here for you. There's another one we use in the clinic. And the appropriate blood work, depending on what's going on, including what's called an ApoE4, which everybody worries about whether they have ApoE4, and whether you need an MRI or not, whatever. And so I truly believe now that everybody should be doing this once a year. Now the average person, if they went into the doctor and said, could you screen my brain? And I want to protect my brain, the doctor would have no idea what to do. But I'm bringing this up because everybody should be doing this. It's because, did you know that all of us lose nerve cells every year, every month? We're losing them, okay? We're also losing connections. So you have to do things actively to challenge your brain to keep the connections healthy in all areas of your brain, okay? We're losing them. So, did you know that you could not have problems with memory today and in 2 weeks they start? And you didn't get a lot of notice. Or you can't find a word. But here's the concept. Every area of the brain has a certain amount of reserve, okay? Reserve. And if you're above that level of reserve, say with your memory, you're not forgetting things. But if you slip below it, you start forgetting things, going into rooms, forgetting things. But a lot of your function depends on your memory. It's not just going into a room. I mean, so many things depend on your memory. If you are hovering just above brain reserve, and then you get a flu, or then you get COVID, or then you get X, Y, and Z, you can go below the level of brain reserve. And so that is not good, just being at the level of brain reserve. And a lot of us are just right there because we've lost enough brain cells and connections, and it varies. And what's interesting about this questionnaire is it assesses every region of the brain. And then when I look at it, I try to figure out, okay, where are people having problems? Where are they losing brain reserve? Is this a whole brain problem? Is it just in the memory centers? Because they say that, you know, most dementias are mainly in the memory centers. They're not. They're in many parts of the brain because we have many departments. Did you know that one part of the brain finds words, but another part of the brain makes the speech? And so those are in different areas of the brain. And the cerebellum is the balance center, and that's connected to everything. And so there's so many things going on that are insulting our brains. The other thing that's going on is people are developing autoimmune antibodies to brain tissue. They're developing autoimmunity to their own parts of their brain. Okay, I became aware of this probably about 7 years ago. And now I've been measuring this in my patients with brain issues, and I am amazed how common this is. And this is really a bad thing. The immune system in the brain, mostly the microglial cells, do not recognize this part of the brain tissue or that as self and start causing inflammatory reactions. I saw a 19-year-old teenager 2 days ago who came in because his dad brought him in, and he was having some brain problems, more like a tremor with his head and his neck. And we had gotten a antibody test, and he had antibodies to like 10 different brain tissues. He was only 19. And so I said, we got a lot of work to do because we've got to, balance the immune system, calm down the immune system, and then we're going to use something to heal your brain directly and get rid of this tremor, but improve your brain function too, because he was having trouble at school. And so the other thing is COVID and this post-COVID syndrome. COVID caused a lot of brain inflammation in people, and some people noticed it with a headache. Other people noticed it with brain fatigue. They go, I can't use my brain very long. A lot of people had body fatigue with it. But there's this post-COVID, long COVID syndrome associated with the spike protein from COVID being attached to parts of the brain. And now when they've done autopsies on people that died of COVID, they found the spike protein in every organ of the body. Every, including the brain. Now, there's ways to deal with this. So there are some ways to break down the spike protein. And did you know that also spike protein attaches to receptors in cells? And then your cells don't work that well in your brain and other parts of your body. So COVID in a lot of people are causing some long COVID symptoms, even if they're not debilitating. And then there's the thing about the vaccine causing major brain problems in people. And that there is an approach to that, and there is a way to deal with it. So if you get the picture, there are a lot of possible things insulting our brain. Another thing is neurotoxins, and these are things that are known to damage nerve tissue that are in cosmetics and are in hairsprays and are in our food. And our food is loaded with neurotoxins. And so I always ask people when I'm assessing them, where do you grocery shop? And when people say Winco, I go, I try not to do that. Winco's like, I just get the chills with Winco, and I will not be caught in Winco, okay? I never thought I'd be caught in Albertsons, because in the greater Seattle area, Albertsons is like not as desirable grocery store, but around here, there's all these parks, so I've learned to appreciate Albertsons, and they have an organic section, and around here, but not in the Seattle area, they are carrying the Safeway Organics products. So I actually like Albertsons now. But I still think the best place to shop is like the food co-op, the Boise Co-op, or Whole Foods or something where you can get organic and limit the neurotoxins. Thank you. And so we are being exposed to neurotoxins every day. Just an example, acrylamide is a neurotoxin. So let me just give you an example of what a neurotoxin is. It's called acrylamide. It came out in the news like 15 years ago that McDonald's French fries had acrylamide in them, and then it was cancer causing. They didn't say it was brain damaging too. And the reason was these oils were being cooked over and over and over again, the heated oils. And so then, people started getting scared about like eating the French fries. And then McDonald's made a statement that they were going to change the oil more frequently as opposed to all day long and stuff. And so how do you get acrylamide in your diet? Coffee has acrylamide in it. Anything browned, anything darker than brown, like soap. When you make, I tell people it's very important to not only limit the acrylamide, but also what's called the advanced glycosylated end products, because these things are called AGEs, and they cause a lot of inflammation in the brain and the body. So, I tell people there's all kinds of things you can do with your diet, but one thing is if you make eggs, when you make eggs, because that's an incredible health food for the brain, don't brown them. Don't brown them, okay? Don't brown things too much. But with coffee, you can get a low acrylamide coffee. So it just so happens that there are very few companies in the world that are actually testing the acrylamide in their coffee, but Purity Coffee actually does. And so they actually came up with, their coffee is the lowest acrylamide probably of any coffee available. And so that's why we start selling this coffee here, because it's low acrylamide, and it also has all kinds of low neurotoxins and high levels of good things for the brain. So I presented a lot of things that can insult and damage the brain. We talked about sleep issues, blood sugar issues can damage the brain. And it's one of the theories now on why a lot of people are getting brain problems because of blood sugar dysregulation. And then low hormone levels can damage the brain, like low testosterone. Estradiol is very important for the brain, actually. Progesterone is very important for the brain, more in women, but also in men. Did you know that men have progesterone and estradiol? We all have all of it. Okay, so hormone issues can affect the brain. So there are so many things that can affect our brain, that can insult our brain. And so when you look at all this, you say, well, what would your goals be? Well, you want to protect your brain. So you want to limit the neurotoxins, you want to shop organic as much as possible, you want to have really healthy things in your food, you want to get the electromagnetic fields in your home tested and mitigate them, meaning minimize them. We can't totally eliminate them, but minimize them. My home has no Wi-Fi. Can you believe it? A home that has no Wi-Fi.
Smart home, no Wi-Fi.
Well, no, so yeah, it's a smarter home with no Wi-Fi because it's all wired for Ethernet. So getting the home tested, mitigating the fields, and did you know you get exposed to very high fields in cars these days? The electric cars are the worst, but now these cars, that the average car now has all these protection systems, and if you're driving or you're in the front seat, right above your head is where it's all going on, the blind spot thing and the radar thing, whatever, all this stuff is going, and I've measured it and it's really high, so that, you've got to do something to decrease the fields in your car or decrease or protect yourself from them. So it so happens that there are ways to protect yourself somewhat from electromagnetic fields by wearing something. I'm wearing it right now that generates a little bit of what's called a scalar field, SCALAR, because you can't, unless you're going to wear shielding fabrics and shielding things, you can't protect yourself from all of it, but you can sort of do things that will generate biologically favorable fields that will protect your body. And there's things that you can use in the home, and there's things that you can use on yourself, okay? So there are ways to deal with this, but I'm just saying there's so many ways that we are being exposed to electromagnetic fields. I had a guy as a patient recently. He moved from Seattle. He was living on a houseboat, And he said he got so debilitated, and he's 42. He got so debilitated, he would freeze. He just couldn't use his brain very well. Or he got into like all this OCD thinking or perseverating, and he got into an anger management problem and all these things. And it's like, what was fascinating is when we got the fields measured on this boat, he had a Sonos system with 20 speakers. I've never heard of this. I've heard of Sonos because it's all Bluetooth, but I've never heard of anybody having 20 speakers on a boat. It's like, and he did, and the fields were like massive what he was being exposed to. So one of your goals should be, I want to protect my brain, protect the brain of my loved ones, okay? And then I want to find out if I've got any conditions or anything's going on that could predispose me more to having brain problems if I'm not having them now. Like ApoE4 is a genetic thing, like low B12 levels, like elevated blood sugar, like hormonal dysregulation, like having Epstein-Barr reactivated and you didn't even know it, but it's like very high levels. Or like Lyme disease, and a lot of people actually have Lyme disease and they're having different problems, but they didn't realize it could affect their brain. And so all you need to do is be bitten by a tick or horseflies, or they even think now it can go to mosquitoes, and that can affect the brain. So there's different things to be able to be evaluated for. The other thing is you want to think about, what am I doing on a regular basis to challenge my brain? Okay, everybody sort of crossword puzzles, but that's not enough. So you want to do like different things to challenge areas of your brain. Like, I always tell people, you want to challenge your memory, get a Simon. Do you know what a Simon is?
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna go get one.
Window, kind of circle around the just.
What's that?
It'll play different areas. You gotta remember what they're
So
working.
this is a Simon.
Oh,
And so what you do, you know, and it'll flash a pattern. And so you'll see a color, and you'll see the pattern, and you try to get as high as you can. And I'll ask people to just practice it every day, try to get as high as you can with this. That's just an example of challenging your brain. What other ways you challenge your brain? Taking dance lessons. Do you know how hard it is to learn a new move? So that's the kind of feeling that you want to have on a regular basis, how hard something is, and you studied something and got past it. Okay, I remember when I was studying ultrasound, because I do ultrasounds of tendons and joints, and it was driving me nuts. Like all these shadows. But I knew, I said, this is good, because you're up against your learning barrier and you're gonna get past that and keep practicing, you got it. So doing things that are easy are not gonna challenge your brain. It's gotta be a bit difficult just at the edge of it, so you're gonna challenge your brain. So, you know, if people are having trouble finding words, I will actually have them get vocabulary cards and start using vocabulary cards and challenging that way. And there's different ways you can challenge that way. There is a website called Brain HQ, which stands for Brain Headquarters, that you can sign up for an account with.
what's the name?
Brain HQ. It stands for Brain Headquarters. And then you can get an account with this company and do brain training. It's actually brain training. And it's sort of generalized brain training. And I think it's a good idea for people to do, you know, a few times a week. And so brain challenges are very important, along with one other thing. So if we want to build more connections with the neurons that we have, then we have to do challenges, because we need what's called brain-derived nerve growth factor, BDNF, which is a growth factor in the brain, which is like fertilizer in your garden. If you don't have enough of these growth factors in your brain, you cannot build the connections, no matter how much challenging you're doing. You need both. The best way to get the BDNF is with exercise. And the best way to get it is actually cardio. Strength training will do some, and I always recommend that people do both cardio and strength training, but I recommend if you don't do anything, at least walk a half an hour a day, at least. So we need BDNF, which is brain-derived nerve growth factor. We get that primarily from exercise, and then we need the challenges. That's sort of like maintenance. And then there's all the things I talked to you about protecting your brain. I don't think anybody should go skiing or bike riding or on a motorcycle without the right kind of helmet. And yet I still see this all the time, even at skateboard parks or skateboards, they should have helmets. So that's another thing. Anybody that's had even one concussion has lost neurons and connections from that. And even that, just that one concussion can predispose them to have brain problems later on if they don't have brain problems now. Does that make sense? And there is something called chronic traumatic encephalopathies, CTE, which all these football players were having, where they're developing severe anger management problems and early dementia, and then really bad dementia. So that's another thing. Did you know that having emotional instability or irritability or anger or stuff where this part of your brain called the limbic system is not functioning normally is a brain problem? It's a brain problem. It's not just a need for a medication, it's a brain problem. And a lot of things like, mood disorders, whether they're related to brain inflammation and neurotransmitters not working properly. So there's so many ways this can manifest, not just with memory issues. It can manifest with mood issues and irritability and snapping and whatever. Okay, so we decided to do it this way because this computer, I wasn't able to change the slides. But I'm trying to indicate that, we all need to have a goal to keep our brains healthy. And did you know also, what is here's a question. If you look around everywhere around here, and especially in Seattle area and on the east side of Seattle, what are the most new buildings going up for that aren't housing? They're memory homes. Like, there's so many memory homes going on the east side of Seattle. Like, I couldn't believe how many. It's like they don't have enough room for people. Now, I don't know about you. I don't want to be one of those. I don't want anybody that I care about being one of those. People do not leave those places. Like, that's like going in there and not coming out. And it's also, you want your brain to function. You don't want to be sort of like embarrassed. Because that's one of the other things, you want to feel good about yourself, have good self-esteem. It's hard to do that if your brain isn't working properly. And I'm very interested in this and committed to this because I'm seeing this in people in their 30s. The brain autoimmunity, that kid in 19, I'm seeing it at all ages. So what's interesting is that people have cognitive impairment, even though they say 10% of people with cognitive impairment will go on to develop dementia. Every 10% every year will go on to develop actually dementia. Did you know that early dementia can be healed? Like healed. I've done it with many people. Healed. And cognitive impairment can be healed. It can be healed. So I'll tell you a story. This lady, about a year and a half ago, when we used to have a clinic in another location, brought her husband in and said, I don't know if you can do anything for him, but he seems like nobody in the family can connect with him. He seems kind of out to lunch. That's another way of saying brain fog or something. And he doesn't remember things. He goes into rooms, he can't remember words. He can't carry on a conversation with them. I go, oh my goodness. And the funny thing was, he was a nice man, but I didn't make a connection with him because he looked like he wasn't there totally. And so I took a history and I realized this guy's got mild to moderate dementia. And so I said to his wife, and I brought her in private, said, he's got mild to moderate dementia, I'm gonna do everything I can. And we're gonna have to put a lot of time and effort into this, and you're gonna have to put some money into this because you're not gonna get this on insurance. And I said, we're gonna change the diet, we're gonna get him sleeping, we're gonna get him doing some exercise, and then we're gonna heal him with this thing called Frequency Specific Microcurrent, which is this little device. and I'll tell you about this. And then we're gonna put them on certain supplements. 10 weeks later, they come in, and this actually happened sooner than that. Because every time before that, like the first 3 visits, I said, hi, how are you? And he didn't say, I'm fine. He didn't say, hi, how are you? He didn't make eye contact. The 4th visit of this treatment, when we're doing everything else, he goes, hi, doctor, and how are you? I go, oh my God, this treatment's working. And then, like 10 weeks into it, his wife goes, oh my God, I got my husband back. And I said to the guy, I said, you are actually really likable. I like you. He goes, I like you too. And I go, oh my God. So, it's touching actually. But I said, we're working some more on this because we're not leaving this right at the edge. So, many people can be healed when they're at that stage. Not everybody. I'd say I've got like a very good percentile, but it just depends on the situation. And I will say this, bringing this one up. Alcohol is not good for you. I've had this dentist bring his wife in on Monday, and she was developing, significant cognitive impairment. And then he said, when she went to the bathroom, is alcohol good for our brains? And I go, no, would you hear this? And he goes, I don't know, I heard just like wine has some good things. And I go, not really. You'd have to drink 100 bottles of red wine to have enough resveratrol to do anything for you. I said, how many drinks do you guys have? 14 drinks a week. That meant 2 drinks a day. And it was hard liquor. But even so alcohol is not healthy. So I said, you're going off all of the alcohol. And I said, if you want to drink some wine, you can do it occasionally. It's better to be biodynamic or organic because wine that isn't has these fungus killing agents that are toxic for the brain and the body. They're called fungicides. Alcohol is not a health food. It's not something to consume to think you're doing something healthy. So I wanted to talk about this a little bit. This is a device called Frequency Specific Microcurrent, and even though it's small, these devices used to be huge, and now they're this small. And it's a 2-channel microcurrent system. The first channel is the condition, like inflammation, or trauma, or virus, or vaccine toxicity, or heavy metals. And the second channel is the tissue, like the forebrain, the prefrontal cortex, the cerebellum, the balance center, or the vagus nerve, or the muscles or the tendons. And so what someone very experienced does when they use this is make programs of channel 1 and channel 2 frequencies to run for a certain period of time to treat all the different conditions for the tissues. And this could be used very nicely for the brain. So when we use it for the brain, I put it on the back of the neck and the forehead. And it actually heals the brain. And so I said, there are some things that can actually do direct healing, and this is one of them. It also heals the vagus nerve and all kinds of things in the nervous system and the gut and all. It does a lot of different things. But I always tell people, if they've got enough cognitive stuff going on, they got autoimmunity in the brain, we're going to definitely be using this. The nice thing is there are no side effects, and it doesn't hurt. It's a comfortable treatment. Anyway, so I want to talk about a few things that people can do. We'll get some supplements here. So if we were to say, what is the one supplement that would be most protective for the brain for most people, it would be a type of curcumin. A type of curcumin that passes through the blood-brain barrier and decreases brain inflammation and activates something called NRF2. And NRF2 is a gene response that produces our own antioxidants and our own anti-inflammatories. And so we use this a lot. It's called cogumine. And it's a long vita curcumin. And that's the type of curcumin that this company formulated to go into the brain. And then the nice thing is there's this product. Nordic Naturals has gummies. They're mango gummies. And it's this product. And we sell them here, and you can get them at the Boise Co-op too. And they have 100 milligrams of active ingredient in each gummy. So I say, look, if you want to have fun, keeping your brain healthy, then take 2 gummies twice a day. Unless you have gut problems, because sometimes this will upset someone's gut because it's got xylitol as a sweetener. But most of the time this doesn't upset anybody's gut unless they take 8 of them. But these are basically the same thing. This is a capsule, this is in a gummy. When I see kids, they're always going to be on the gummies. But if I see adults who go, I can't take another capsule. Okay, do you want to chew a gummy?
So basically those two are the same?
Yeah, but this is 1/4 the dose in a gummy. And this is 400 milligrams. Then this one is called mycobotanicals for the brain. And what's interesting with this is there's certain herbs and mushroom extracts that are really good for the brain. Lion's mane is actually very good for the brain. I don't know if any of you ever cooked it. It's really tasty if you know how to cook it. You gotta like fry it. It's really good if you actually make an omelet with it. But it's actually very good for myelin in the brain. You've heard about MS and myelin. Well, myelin is lost in a lot of other conditions other than just MS. And so this helps the myelin. And then ginkgo in this product helps brain blood flow. And then there's something called RECODE, which is an herb that is probably one of the most beneficial herbs for the whole brain to protect the brain. So we use that one too. And then if people are actually having memory problems, we use this one called brain memory that actually starts improving memory right away. Like, you know, I want people to have some results right away, but brain healing doesn't occur right away. But as it turns out that omega-3s are really important for the brain, DHA is more important than EPA. So we always want people to have a lot of DHA. There's a new designer lipid for the brain that has been said to heal a lot of people's brains that have had early cognitive problems. It's called plasmalogens. And there's a researcher from Canada that developed these, and he was looking for what's called the prodrome of diseases, the early markings of things that were developing before they developed, and he found out that almost every disease, people had low plasmalogen levels, especially neurological things, but even heart things. So there's something called plasmalogens that I will use in people that really have more severe problems. But this directly starts improving memory because acetylcarnitine or acetylcholine is a memory molecule. It actually is the neurotransmitter for memory. So if we take acetylcarnitine, which is in this, and then we eat foods that have choline like eggs and some other things, then we can start improving our memory.